All right, let's just get into the main story that we want to talk about because just moments ago, there's been a huge backlash against Joe Rogan after he hosted a podcast with, of course, the CEO of Jack Dorsey. And the comment section pretty much says it all, as I'm seeing comments like people saying that the Joe Rogan that we once all loved is dead. And of course, the video is getting completely ratioed with only 3.2 thousand people upvoting the interview that Joe Rogan conducted with Jack Dorsey, but with over 14,000 people downvoting it. A big ratio. And pretty much the comment section says it all, with people saying things like, quote, people are not buying this PR stunt. There's another comment saying here, remember when Joe was present during an interview, question mark. I missed that. And to me, after watching the interview, I do have to say that Jack Dorsey does kind of come off a little wacky. He kind of comes off more like he was trying to be a religious leader than a CEO of a company. But I think people also need to understand that this is ultimately a 41-year-old billionaire who does also date 23-year-old models. And to me, he was a little bit with just not in touch with reality with what he's been saying and how he's been expressing himself on the live stream, because a lot of the things that he was saying were contradicted with what his corporation has been doing. And we have to understand here, as one of the comments reads in the videos, quote, Jack Dorsey has done more to meddle in our elections than Russia. And there's been a huge backlash against Jack Dorsey, mainly because people believe that Joe Rogan kind of went soft at him. And you could see that from some of the comments, and he didn't pressure him and question Jack Dorsey on some of the activities that his mass corporation conducts. Now, I thought a very interesting part of the interview happened at around 48 minutes and 55 seconds, where actually Joe Rogan asked about Alex Jones, who was terminated from using Twitter for supposedly violating the terms and services. And Joe Rogan asked Jack Dorsey point blank, what did Alex Jones do to get permanently banned? Which I found interesting because Alex Jones actually launched a whole attack on Joe Rogan just this week alone, which was pretty out there, Jason, to say the least.
Yeah, look, the bottom line is this man has been set up by the CIA, the deep state, the NSA, the MI5, the MI6, the elemental PO to be the new cult leader that's going to take your kids down an LSD DMT path to hell with magic mushrooms painted with demons.
And Jason, you're not really exaggerating, because how Alex Jones came off was very, very speculative, and that's a very nice term to use here, and talking about of like insider references and acting like he knows a lot of secrets that he's not going public with, but also just a lot of kind of really kind of far out there comments. But it was interesting to see Joe Rogan actually ask Jack Dorsey about Alex Jones, and Jack Dorsey even said, well, I'm not even sure what he actually violated, and why was he permanently banned from using the platform. So that was a big contentious point, as well as the fact that people are accusing now Joe Rogan of deleting a lot of the critical comments of the CEO of Twitter. A lot of comments were made by Sargon of Akkad. There was a comment made by, of course, Mark Dice as well. A lot of those comments were upvoted, and a lot of people were saying that they can't find them anymore on specifically the video that was published by Joe Rogan. Now, Mark Dice actually released a statement saying that he could actually see his own comment, but when he logged out of his account, he couldn't see his comment at all, which, of course, people were pointing to clear censorship. Mark Dice actually tweeted at Joe Rogan and then tweeted a photo of Joe Rogan blocking him. And there's been actually beef between Mark and Joe for a couple of years now, so it doesn't surprise me that they have been blocked. But of course, a lot of people right now are saying confirmed. Joe Rogan is now helping out Jack Dorsey by deleting critical comments of him on his page. And people are saying that this is absolute truth, but it could also be a possibility that Joe Rogan, who did this video live and then deleted it and then re-uploaded it, that this was one of the reasons why some of those comments went missing. It could also be because of the YouTube algorithm, which has a bias against especially Sargon and Mark Dice and other alternative creators. And sometimes they downrank and sometimes they get rid of comments in there as well. So it's actually unclear to see if there was any kind of meddling by Joe Rogan, but I hope he makes a statement about it, because it wouldn't look good if he was deleting comments from the bigger discussions that are being had on his video, which I think are very important to discuss. And the bigger aspect here is, of course, Jack Dorsey himself. And to me, honestly, there could have been more to kind of question Jack Dorsey on to find out more critically important information, because Jack Dorsey himself admits that he is biased. And of course, every human being is biased, but it comes to a point where even conservatives within the Twitter organization have come out and expressed that they don't feel safe even expressing themselves, working for, of course, Twitter. Even USA Today came out talking about the political bias and the crackdowns that have been politically motivated inside of Twitter and, of course, the people who use Twitter. Now, Jack Dorsey, just like similar comments he made in the Joe Rogan interview, said, "Oh no, this doesn't affect us." As he said before, as Mashable covered, the left-leaning bias doesn't affect content decisions at all, and a lot of people are just calling straight outright hooey on that and lies, because I think it's pretty clear to everyone that yes, there's a major bias, especially in Twitter, especially with what we just saw recently, where we saw a lot of celebrities and mainstream media figures literally call for the doxing and physical violence of teenagers because they had a MAGA hat and were smirking during, of course, the whole Native American controversy. And a lot of those left-wing people who were calling for violence and doxing, they weren't punished by Twitter. But when similar instances happen, for an example, when people tell journalists to, quote, learn to code, now Twitter sees that as abusive behavior because the, quote, learn to code is being sent to journalists from predominantly BuzzFeed and Vice who lost their jobs recently. So the bias here is pretty evident, especially with all the people who were permanently banned from that platform. And it's not just prominent figures, but also bigger organizations. As we found out from the Washington Times, that Twitter suppressed messages criticizing Planned Parenthood and other pro-life groups out there. The bias is very clear with their censorship, with their shadow banning, and also shilling for the establishment, as it's not only people on the right who are getting hit, but also a lot of people who are anti-establishment, like the Free Thought Project, the anti-media. My personal friend, Carrie Wedler, who had her account deleted without an explanation to why it's happening. And it's also done for bigger state government reasons, as we see Twitter recently take down hundreds of accounts that were regime of Maduro, that were pro-Venezuelan accounts coming from Venezuela, talking about their support, who didn't want a coup d'etat happening in their country. All of those people have been banned. There was a similar move also made, of course, in Syria, where a lot of Syrian government accounts and Syrian voices, pro-Syrian voices, were also censored and deleted. And of course, a lot of close associates to Nicolas Maduro were also just totally blocked and suspended from using the platform, as we're seeing just awe-stunning video of what looks like American military helicopters in Colombia heading towards the Venezuelan border. So this was an issue that I think Joe was kind of very soft on. And in one point, I do agree with Joe when he says, I'm here to talk to everyone. And people accuse him of platforming people and empowering them. And I'm kind of with Joe here, that he should have a right to talk to everyone and exchange a dialogue and to have a bigger discussion here, that we could get a better understanding. Overall, this is getting a lot of attention. This got my attention. This had me watching. And overall, I think these conversations are a good thing. Where the problem comes in and why people are mad is because when Joe Rogan says that he wants to talk to everyone, he doesn't believe in deplatforming. The problem comes when he's literally talking to the Orwellian overlord billionaire deplatforming king Jack Dorsey himself. And this is why a lot of people are having a backlash against this video, because they don't think Joe Rogan argued and fought for what he said he believed in, and he took the situation very lightly. And if he truly did believe in talking to everyone and giving everyone a platform, he would fight for that kind of idea more than he did to what people accuse him of giving a very soft-handed approach to Jack Dorsey. And I could understand that sentiment as well. Do you agree or disagree with that? There's also talks about AI and Bitcoin, which I know you're dying to talk about, Jason.
Well, Luke, there's a lot to unpack there, my friend, I gotta tell you. Let's start with why Dorsey banned me, okay? Now, Joe was very direct. He said, Jack, you were like the last platform to ban Alex Jones. But after he, like, chased you, he found you, that's when you did it.
Jack was like, no. That's not why we did it. Now,
but that is true. That is a true statement, because Alex Jones, outside of the Capitol in Washington, D.C., screamed at Jack Dorsey as he was getting into his car. That's a fact.
that is absolutely a fact. Now, it's weird that Jason Burmis knows why Alex Jones officially got banned by Twitter, but Jack Dorsey, who banned Alex Jones and is the head of this algorithm I want to talk about, and AI that I want to talk about before we get him pushing Bitcoin. We'll get there. He did so because he said, first of all, in this interview, and this is why I'm not going to be so hard on Joe, because there's a lot of stuff that came out in this interview if you listen to it. All right. He said he didn't know. Now, they said that the way he treated Oliver Dorsey, in this interview, Dorsey said, well, he didn't violate our terms of service until after he was on the radar.
It's total nonsense. I violated every terms of service since I was 16. I was notorious for it. The fact of the matter is, I was with thousands of terms of service breaks by the time I was 20. After I ate a big bowl of chili.
Anyway, he says that. Now, basically, Jones officially got banned for bullying Oliver Dorsey and live streaming it on the Twitter platform from the halls of the Capitol building. Now, if you doubt me, I'm sure you can dig those up somewhere. It was pretty funny. He was calling him like a raccoon eyes.
Look how evil he is. You can tell.
So that's why he officially got banned. For some reason, Jack Dorsey doesn't know that. I know that. Now, Dorsey also starts talking about how the algorithm curates content. And he also starts talking about how it is an AI algorithm. Now, Rogan then goes, wait a minute. So this is all run by AI? And he's literally asked, he says the C word, Luke. He asks him, well, should we have artificial intelligence censoring speech? And
he says no, it's about down-ranking people who have a set of history of, quote, abusive behavior. But who decided that abusive behavior? And he's talking about how people who they don't like, their responses won't show up in the response feed, which I found a stunning admission for him to actually bring up.
So all that comes out, right? Then he starts talking about some safe nets to try to get around bots, right? Because, Russia, they had all those Twitter bots and, they don't really care about that. But he starts talking about facial recognition. And then Joe's like, wait a minute, facial recognition. And then Dorsey's like, oh, no, we're not going to actually take your face. Yeah, I'm sure. We're just going to make sure it's a human being. It's a real person tweeting this stuff out. So think about how far this 140 to 280 now character social media machine has got, that it wants to basically biometrically identify your tweets, then let an AI algorithm rate them and whether they should be curated up or down. It's very spooky.
Well, this also works in hand with, of course, his app, the Cash App, which also is integrated with Bitcoin, which he pumped pretty heavily on the Joe Rogan podcast and talked about how cryptocurrencies are really the currency of the future. And if they're in hands of someone with Jack Dorsey, who's already using AI, who's already coming off like kind of trying to be a religious figure here, talking about, oh yeah, don't worry, your face scans, it won't be used with anybody else. I don't believe it. And it makes it very critical. Now, of course, this kind of pumps up Bitcoin, but at the same time, it makes me worried because, again, as we covered on this channel, the potential of Bitcoin is two-sided. It's a new form of technology, but that technology could be used for sinister purposes as much as it could be used for good purposes. And there has been a big establishment push to watch, monitor, surveil, and keep track of any kind of transaction that happens on, of course, this bigger public blockchain that could be used for, of course, very sinister controlling motives. And again, everything here has to be taken with a grain of salt. I'm happy that this interview happened. I'm happy that we got to understand more of it. I do understand why people are being critical of Joe for giving this kind of soft approach, but ultimately, I would rather know and rather see this than not. And even though he's getting a lot of flack, overall, a good important discussion that needed to be had, and I'm happy it was had.
No, I absolutely agree, Luke. I'm glad it's out there. Again, you get a lot of admissions here. You see how the company is run from this guy's perspective, at least what he's willing to shell out. Listen, Rogan asked some tough questions. He just didn't follow up with any of them. He just took his word, you know what I mean, and let him kind of talk around these things. Again, what we got out of this is that we have a company that does have a bias, is absolutely left-leaning, is letting an AI algorithm dictate who gets to say what and when and where that goes. And he kept, what was really funny, Luke? He kept trying to promote not following people, but to follow subject matter. And one of the big things that he kept going back to was Brexit. So this guy is obviously anti-Brexit in every single way, shape, and form. I mean, the way they were talking about Farage and his point of view, and remember, we talked about Brexit earlier in the program, that's a pro-people movement, period. All right? So, again, this just shows you that we need another platform, guys. Twitter's not it. Twitter is going to have a limited lifespan. It's not going to be the end-all, be-all. Guess what? Facebook's not going to be either. Let me tell you something. I limit the kids, but they both have phones, right? And you can kind of tell patterns on social media. Remember when Facebook was the biggest thing? Well, this generation is all Snapchat. Facebook's kind of died down. It's more my generation, your generation. Mid-20s, upper 40s into 50s. The kids aren't really using it. These kids, they're 8 and 9, they're on TikTok. We don't even know what's going to be the next Twitter. So Dorsey, enjoy your billions of dollars. Be smart now with your nose ring, because the people will figure it out. I promise you.
Yeah, and it was interesting because, again, a lot of the conversations were very generalized, were very vague. They weren't very much to the point, and I do wish Joe Rogan would have followed up and kind of held his feet to the fire a little bit. He had to have this kind of balance because he knows he wants to keep having powerful people on, but at the same time, his audience is very mad at him. And Jack Dorsey, he kept talking about how he wants to help people and serve people. I think overall, even when you look at the basic understandings of technological advancements in social media, it is pretty clear by many scientific methods and by many scientific discoveries that social media, by and large, has been a very negative impact on human civilization. Now, of course, there's some good aspects of it, but overall, as far as depression, as far as what's been happening, especially the hate clicks that have been incentivized, the censoring, the manipulation that's been happening behind the scenes for, of course, the powerful that Twitter does, that Jack Dorsey is guilty of. I don't buy when he's on that Joe Rogan show and says he wants to help people and serve people, because again, bad things have been done with good intentions, and I think this is the case, and I think this is why there's such a backlash with so many people disappointed that Jack Dorsey's feet weren't held to the fire. And I agree with that.